Welcome into our Major League Soccer 22 under 22 reaction show alongside Matt Doyle, Tom Bogert. I'm Stefano Fusaro. This is one of the most exciting awards that we do every single year because it highlights all of the young talent that we have in our league. And every year it feels like it's more and more difficult to narrow it down to just 22.
Yeah, 10 years ago you would have struggled to get to 22. This year I got to about 40 before I started crossing names off the list. And it's all part of MLS's evolution into, to use a phrase heard around these parts, a league of choice. And the idea is to create a league full of Flamengos or Boca Juniors or Benficas, teams that just develop their own talent, but also take some of the best players from around the world, get them ready for the biggest stages in the world. And oh, by the way, win a championship or two along the way.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, for me, what I like so much about this list is the eclectic range of how players get there. There's first and foremost the increased investment and expertise in the academy system in the United States and Canada, producing a whole lot of players. And then there's also, thanks to the U22 initiative and others, that teams are more incentivized to go down to South America and spend big money on some of the highest rated players in the world. And they come here, they play well, as you said, win a championship or two, hopefully, and then move on.
Yeah, there really is so many paths for young players here in Major League Soccer. Now, if you're new to the league or you're new to 22 under 22, here is the selection process. I think the biggest thing to look at is, look, they got to be under 22 by the end of this season. I think that's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, the name 22 under 22 is raising a lot of questions already answered by the name. It is under 22, so great young players like Thiago Almada, Duncan Maguire, last year's winner, Jesus Ferreira, they are not eligible for the award this year.
Now here is the full list. We got it. As you probably saw it already on MLSsoccer.com, Alan Velasco, our #1 player, midfielder from FC Dallas, native of Argentina. We're going to get to him in just a minute. We're going to focus in on players 1 through 10 here. And Matt, who is a player that stood out here in your number 1 through 10?
Honestly, the whole list stands out, but I have to offer a mea culpa on Aiden Morris. I had him too low on my list, but I think the voters got this right because if you look at his career, he was already the second best player on the field in an MLS Cup back in 2020 when the Crew beat the Seattle Sounders. He was awesome in that game. He has played his way into a starting role, really a starring role now under Wilfried Nancy with the Crew. And oh, by the way, he's in the U.S. national team and he has a shot at being on the Olympics. Just because he doesn't project as maybe a $20 million sale in the future doesn't mean he's not a wildly successful player already. Someone who could be a building block for the Crew for the next decade.
Yeah, without a doubt. Now, Tom, besides Velasco, what's another player that you see in this list that you were impressed by?
Yeah, Doyle's point about let's value the on-field production already rather than just projecting to the future. Another player for me is Jack McGlynn, Philadelphia Union central midfielder. He is very important to what this Union team does. He also offers something different that the players in his position do not offer. He can play a beautiful pass, his range, his technical ability, his IQ, his free kick ability.
Cultured left foot.
Cultured left foot. You got it, Doyle. Yeah, this is another player that I just love to watch in this league.
Now let's focus in on 11 through 22. A lot of really good players on this list. And Matt, I'm seeing actually the guy that you voted #1 on the second half of the list.
Yeah, I had Chris Brady #1 on the second half of the list because of moments like that. If you watch the games and you compare him to Gaga Slonina, who's a fellow homegrown for the Chicago Fire, who was #4 on this list last year, they are the same age. Chris Brady has been better than Gaga Slonina was last year, and he kept them in the playoff hunt down the stretch. His underlying numbers are fantastic. I mean, really off the charts for a teenager. Gaga Slonina was sold for $10 million to Chelsea.
Yes.
I think Chris Brady might go for more than that to that type of team. He is that type of talent.
Now, Tom, who is another player on this 11 to 22 that you're looking at?
For me, it's Dylan Barrero, New England Revolution winger. He would absolutely have been in the top 5 for me if he did not pick up a torn ACL earlier this season. Before he got injured, he was crucial to everything New England was doing. He has technical ability, one-on-one explosiveness, dynamism. Oh yeah, he's already a senior Columbia international. Columbia are pretty good at this. So New England got a wonderful young player on their hands here. He was acquired for about $4 million from Atlético Mineiro in Brazil. He's somebody that they're expecting to be continue developing and move on to Europe at some point. Obviously, the injury changes that timeline just a little bit, so we'll see what happens when he returns next year. But again, the future is very, very bright for
Tajon Buchanan replacement, but also could end up taking that same path that we've seen Tajon Buchanan take for the Revs, going to Club Brugge in Belgium, and now he's on the radar of teams like Inter Milan, AC Milan. This is the pathway that we've wanted to see created in MLS for a long time. The pathway, it's here now.
And look at what New England are doing with Tajon Buchanan, with another player on this list that we'll talk about later, Noel Buck, Georgie Petrovic. They have done this in the last few years, and this is modern MLS.
Now we focus on our number one player on this year's list, Alan Velasco from FC Dallas, midfielder, 21 years old. He arrived in Dallas in 2022 from Independiente in his native Argentina. Supremely talented player. He's got 9 goals, 11 assists in 51 matches, and he recently got his first call up to the full Argentina national team. Tom, what are your thoughts on Velasco being the number one player?
So for me, he was my number one pick. When I'm doing this vote, what I want from my number one pick is some combination of talent and production right now. I need big potential to grow into a very, very expensive type of big club. Can you see him playing in the Champions League one day? I think I can. And that's why he kind of got the edge for me here. And that's where Alan Velasco, as a winger, as an attacking player, number 10, he's always going to be more valuable than, say, a defensive midfielder or a left back. So that's why he gets the edge for me.
He's a versatile player. And Matt, you have a little video here on just how good he's been for Dallas and how they've used him in different situations.
Well, Tom just said a winger, an attacking player, number 10. He buried the lead. He's a number 10. And I think that's why Alan Velasco is number 1 on this list. And it's a little bit interesting because in most of world football, the classic number 10 has kind of died out. Right? But not in MLS. MLS is still the land of the South American number 10, the guy who wants to get on the ball and make magic. And we didn't see Velasco in that position until the middle of this season when they switched to a 4-2-3-1. And it's because of this. You want him getting the ball in the heart of the opposing defense, bracketed by 3 defenders. Have to make magic, eyes in the back of his head, knows where the space is, turn, drive forward, and then get into the box. This is a great chance created because of that number 10 magic. And that's not all there is to his game. You can see him now scanning, understanding the nature of Miami's defense, where the pressure is going to come from, how much time he has to receive, turn, nutmeg, and then release the attack into the final third. And this is less about structure than it is about the singular genius who can advance a team upfield and get them into position to threaten goal. And because he doesn't have to worry about structure, here he is attacking the back post. Doesn't turn into a goal, but it turns into a corner. This is good play. And then this right here, this is genius. The inch perfect through ball. That's this year's 22 under 22 winner to last year's 22 under 22 winner, and to a guy that we're going to talk about a little bit later on this year's list, Bernard Camungo, putting the ball in the back of the net. You want Alan Velasco as a number 10 so he could come deep in the play like this, get on the ball earlier, and allow the team to attack at pace in space. When they were playing a 4-3-3 with him on the wing, I think that limited him. I don't think he was getting the ball in those spots. And yeah, you want him on the ball in these spots because whether that's a foul or not, it's Alan Velasco dodging a tackle. And now it's a game of cat and mouse between the number 10 and the center back. He needs Kamal Miller to flip his hips and orient towards the ball, and as soon as he does that, he's going to play in Paul Arriola. Paul Arriola, he makes a little bit of a mess of it, gets bailed out here by Robert Taylor, but this is just picture-perfect playmaker play from Alan Velasco. I think he is a number 10. I love watching him in this position. It's been a 4-2-3-1 the last couple games from FC. I think it's going to be a 4-2-3-1 right into the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. He's so good at that position, and you see
every Argentine in the world can do that, it seems like, Stefano. Should we get you Ed Mensley?
Yeah, give me number 10 shirt, and I got it. I got it all covered. Don't worry about it. Now, obviously, a big thing with these players in the 22 is where they're going to end up, right? Because it's obviously a lot of transfer value for these young players. So for Alan, what do you see as far as a transfer is concerned, Tom?
Yeah, so first and foremost, he was signed for $7 million. That was a significant fee for FC Dallas, a club record. When he goes eventually, and he will go eventually, that was the idea from when they signed him, and that's what they want to do. It has to be at least $10 million, I'd assume. If I'm Dallas, I'm probably asking for $15 million. As for talking to sources around Alan Velasco, around this club, some names I've heard: Villarreal, Porto. These are 2 very big teams and 2 very good development teams. This would be a wonderful next step in Europe. I've also heard that Ajax had some interest, but Ajax have a couple bigger problems than signing a number 10 from MLS right now. So who knows about that? So Villarreal and Porto are two teams that I know are interested in Alan Velasco, and we'll see kind of how this develops, whether the transfer offers come now or it waits a little bit, because Ricardo Pepi, they plan to keep him for another year, and then all of a sudden a $20 million bid came in and he can't turn that down. So we'll see what happens with Alan Velasco.
All right, so we're talking about Alan Velasco. Well, we're fortunate enough to have just spoken to him. So let's hear from him right now. Just moments ago, we're able to chat with our number 1 player on 22 under 22 for this season, Alan Velasco. Ahora nos acompaña El número 1 de nuestra lista MLS 22 Under 22, Alan Velasco de FC Dallas. Primeramente, Alan, felicidades por este honor que te da la Liga Major League Soccer.
Bueno, la verdad que sorprendido un poco y bueno, un poco contento porque bueno, la verdad que no me lo esperaba, así que bueno, muy contento y bueno, esto también es premio al esfuerzo que uno hace día a día y también bueno, al equipo, a los compañeros que obviamente que sin ellos no hubiese sido posible, ¿no?
En el momento que te dijeron, ¿no?, que este es un premio que habías terminado número 1, ¿cuál fue el momento de satisfacción cuando te dijeron que bueno, fuiste elegido número 1 para esta lista?
Sí, bueno, hace un rato, sinceramente, fue que me enteré y por eso es que estoy aún sorprendido y no lo sabía, pero sí, bueno, es un orgullo enorme personalmente y bueno, también como decía recién, agradecido al equipo, a mis compañeros que día a día hacen un esfuerzo enorme porque el fin de semana hagamos las cosas bien y bueno, sin duda que es gracias a ellos, al cuerpo técnico y bueno, contento y bueno, esperemos que podamos ir por más.
Pero tomaste la decisión de venir a la Liga Major League Soccer en el 2022 y ahora te nombran el mejor jugador joven de la liga. ¿Cómo te ha ayudado Major League Soccer y también Dallas en seguir desarrollando su juego?
Sí, bueno, cuando yo llegué acá nunca había jugado en otra liga que no era la Argentina y la verdad que me recibieron siempre muy bien, siempre con cualquier cosa que yo necesitaba, siempre estuvieron a disposición, tanto FC Dallas como la MLS, así que desde ese momento hasta el día de hoy nunca me faltó nada, digamos, solamente tenía que entrar a la cancha y jugar y nada, para mí es una experiencia nueva todavía, pero bueno, cada vez adaptándome más a la liga y ya aprendiendo todo como es acá y la verdad que muy contento y disfrutando y metiéndole con todo como para poder entrar a los playoffs ahora.
Alan, la liga se ha convertido en una de las más populares para los jugadores jóvenes de Sudamérica para venir acá y seguir desarrollando su juego. ¿Qué te parece de lo que es la liga ahora con tantos jugadores de Sudamérica y la importancia que han podido seguir luciéndose en esta liga aquí en los Estados Unidos?
Sí, la verdad que hay muchos jugadores latinos, muchos jugadores de nombre con muchísima trayectoria en el fútbol mundial y en Europa también bueno, que están jugando actualmente acá. Y sí, para mí en lo personal es algo muy lindo enfrentarse cada fin de semana a jugadores muy importantes que hicieron, ya te digo, una trayectoria muy grande a lo largo de su carrera y está bueno que la liga siga creciendo a lo largo del tiempo y bueno, seguramente que va a seguir creciendo estos años.
Quiero enfocarme en uno de los momentos más importantes de la temporada. Uno de los partidos más emocionantes que vimos fue en la Leagues Cup, cuando jugaron frente a Inter de Miami. Obviamente no terminó el resultado como lo querían ustedes, pero fue un partido increíble. Vos también tuviste un partido que fue para recordar por siempre. ¿Cómo fue ese momento para poder jugar un partido de tanta importancia frente a uno de tus héroes en Leo Messi?
Sí, ese día fue una cosa de loco, fue un partido que, como bien lo dijiste, tuvo muchas vistas de toda parte del mundo, tanto acá como en otras partes, y bueno, si bien no fue el resultado que queríamos, nos llevamos todos una experiencia hermosa de haber jugado contra el mejor jugador del mundo, y nada, fue muy lindo, salvo el resultado.
Finalmente, dos preguntitas en una, aquí te hago. Hablamos un poquito antes del partido frente a Inter Miami. Cambiaste camisetas con Leo Messi, que obviamente es el sueño de todo jugador, especialmente para un jugador argentino. ¿Qué te dijo Messi en ese momento? Y después, cuando sí pudiste entrar a la selección de Argentina, qué importante fue ese momento y obviamente tener el apoyo de Messi le ayuda mucho a un jugador, ¿no?
Sí, bueno, el día que jugamos contra Inter, hablé ahí un poco previo al partido, minutos antes de que arranque. Nada, le agradecí por todo lo que hizo por nosotros, los argentinos. Yo creo que un poco le di el mensaje que toda la gente le quisiera dar y nada, agradecerle también por la Copa del Mundo. Y él también me dijo que gracias, que nada, que disfrute ahí el partido y bueno, después a lo último me saludó y me deseó suerte, así que no fue nada más que eso. Y con respecto a cuando fui a la selección, estuve con él ahí, lo vimos todo, me saqué también una foto, pero no hablamos nada porque bueno, él estaba con los compañeros ahí, yo tampoco soy de molestar, ni mucho menos, y entonces tuvimos solamente un saludo y nada más que eso.
Bueno, Alan, muchísimas gracias por todo esto. Felicidades de un argentino a otro, que sigas teniendo éxito.
Muchas gracias, un abrazo muy grande y bueno, fue un placer.
Well, Alan is just a prime example, one of many South American players that have really made MLS the league of choice, coming here to develop their skills before making another move or even staying here in MLS. And this is really, Tom, it's really increased the level of play and really on the action that we're seeing week after week in Major League Soccer.
Yeah, let's start with Velasco as the prime example here. He was, again, a very expensive player, a club record signing for Dallas. He's somebody who a lot of European teams were interested, and he chose that this was the right destination, whether it's development and whether it's the financial side of things, the lifestyle, everything else, the quality of the league that has continued to grow. Players around the world are figuring out, oh, like, I can go to Dallas. Ricardo Pepi went to Europe, and Weston McKennie and Chris Richards, all these players, like, okay, like that's a nice step for me. I'm gonna develop as a player, I'm gonna enjoy my soccer, and I'm gonna get to Europe one day like I want to, or hopefully get to the next level that I want to be at.
And it's good that you mentioned Dallas so many times, right? Because they have been at the forefront of this. But what we're seeing now in this clip, we're seeing highlights of players from Miami. Of course, we know Miami went shopping this summer in a big way for Messi and Busquets and Alba, but they also brought in Diego Gomez and Farias and Aviles. You know, we're seeing Thales Magno, who of course was sold for a big number to NYCFC, and they sold two South American players to teams for 8 figures just this summer. That's FC Cincinnati getting involved. Of course, Philadelphia Union have a great track record putting teams into some of the biggest leagues and biggest clubs in Europe. And it's what we all want to see. Part of this, though, is you do find players like, say, a Lucho Acosta, who came here as a young man and now has developed into the centerpiece of the Supporters' Shield winning FC Cincinnati side. Maybe Pedro Vite can be that for Vancouver someday. So it's a virtuous cycle. Now, getting more talent and developing more talent means you get more talent and develop more talent in the future. It puts all these teams to be in a situation where it's more sustainable in the long term, both winning titles, hopefully, and making some money on the global transfer market and making the biggest clubs in the world take notice.
Yeah, the middle class, there's so many players that are coming through, and like you said, they're not all going to be Velasco or Thiago Almada. But going back to the top end of this spectrum, Thiago Almada was the first active MLS player to win a World Cup. He was teammates with Lionel Messi at the World Cup. He played at the World Cup. He was only signed because there's a lot of money that Atlanta United put up as a league record fee to sign Thiago Almada, and that's what you get. You get a record-breaking player.
And I think with this list, right, I mean, we see it every year. This is a list that means a lot because a lot of these players that were on, for example, last year's list are now over in Europe at some of the top leagues in the world doing their thing. I look there at Paxton Aronson, who obviously started at the Philadelphia Union, and now he's in Bundesliga playing for Frankfurt.
And oh, by the way, John Duran of the Chicago Fire is now banging in goals for Aston Villa, and he didn't even make the list last year.
Yeah. Is there any other player there that you kind of look at from, it doesn't have to be these players, Matt, but some of the other players that you maybe look at from last year's list that are having success in Europe?
I mean, you know, Ricardo Pepi from 2 years ago, he's still young enough to be on this list. Kevin Paredes, a player I really like. You're going to see him with the U.S. Olympic team with Paxton Aronson. He's still young enough to be on this list. He was, of course, sold for a lot of money to Wolfsburg in the Bundesliga. Ishmael Kone's Canadian neighbor, Jadon Nelson, was excellent last year, I thought, for Toronto FC. He could have been on this list. It keeps going, guys.
So now let's spin it forward and look at this year's list. We got the transfer guru in here, Tom Bogert. So of these players, of this list, the 22 under 22 for this season, who is the most likely to be transferred, let's say, in the next 2 windows?
Yeah, for me, Noel Buck is the first name that comes to mind, the New England Revolution central midfielder. there are the clubs that I've heard that have been interested in him, and he's had a lot of scouts come and watch him. Arsenal, Burnley, and Manchester City. Those are 3 names that I've got. He's got an English passport, as he's an England youth international, currently on international duty with the country. There's a lot of English teams that are interested in him because of the domestic status. There's some teams in Germany that are interested in him, but usually when an English team comes in, they usually have more money to spend. So we'll see what happens when official bids come and official talks with New England. I'm expecting something to be done in like the 5 to 8 million range, and then it's about what the best opportunity is for him. Do you want to push for a move to, say, an Arsenal and then take a loan to the championship? Or do you want to go to a smaller club like a Burnley or maybe someone in the upper championship and understand that you might not always be in the Premier League? You could get relegated, or you could just be in the second division. So those are the 2 pathway options.
He should go to a team that plays actual soccer. And there are some teams like that in England now. There are some teams that aren't. Now, obviously, the top tier, as you said, if he goes to an Arsenal or a Manchester City, he's going there to be part of their loan army. And that's fine. We've seen that work out for players over the years. But I would love to see him go to a team that has the idea of, we want to play through midfield, we want to have the ball, because that's Noel Buck's skill set. He's really good at receiving the ball in traffic. He's got a big frame. He knows how to use it, but he's also got soft feet. He can really, ride a tackle, then turn possession positive, go in a progressive, put the ball into the final third. He's really, really good at that. It's why he is in England U19 camp, and this would be groundbreaking, right? Yeah. Because MLS has developed a lot of great players for a lot of great teams, but we're talking like one of the biggest national teams in the world. Velasco with Argentina, MLS played a big role there. Noel Buck, even bigger role, coming from the Revs Academy, being on the radar for England. It's huge.
Another player that I'm told to watch over the next year or so, going into the next transfer window, is Caleb Wiley, Atlanta United left back, U.S. international. I've been told that there have been what's described to me as multiple big offers already declined for Caleb Wiley. Sources say a Bundesliga club came to watch him last week in their game against Philadelphia. Wiley could have pushed for the move, could have pushed for any of these moves, but he wants to win in Atlanta. He also understands he's in a great situation. He's the starting left back. He's playing in a good, fun team. He wants to be able to go to the right option, not just the first team that comes, not just the first improved contract offer that's going to come. He wants to go to the right club. So he's somebody to watch. And again, I was talking about Velasco, where there's more money for attacking players. There's going to be a lot of money for Caleb Wiley, even though he's a left back. His profile is pretty elite in terms of his athletic ability and the way that he's viewed by scouts who knew him before he signed his first professional contract with Atlanta.
Yeah, we've seen it this year. He gets up and down. He can attack. He can still recover and back and defend. But as you said, finding the right landing spot that's the biggest thing. Because I mentioned Kevin Paredes before. I think Kevin Paredes is a fantastic young player. He barely gets on the field for Wolfsburg because Wolfsburg, they're not a developmental club. So you want to see Wiley make the right choice for himself. Maybe that means coming back to Atlanta next year.
Now, when we talk about this list, it's very important too, right? Because we talked about it. It's not only about how much better the play on the field gets with these young players, but it's also the business side of Major League Soccer. So, from these players, from this list, Tom, who do you think is most likely to go for the largest transfer fee?
Yeah, Velasco's the answer, and we already spoke about him before, and I already gave that spiel. So another player that I'd look at, I think Facundo Farias, was acquired for about $5.5 million by Inter Miami. He was, Facundo Torres was somebody who was one of the brightest talents in South America when he came to Orlando. This is the same thing with Farias. He would have already been in Europe if he didn't get hurt. He was one of the premier talents in Argentina. His talent jumps off the screen. He hasn't quite hit his consistency yet in Miami, but he's been here for a couple months, and playing alongside Lionel Messi, there's going to be a ton of eyeballs on you, and he's going to go for a lot of money with it.
So if you follow along with this cast of characters that we have here on MLS Season Pass, you know that we love a list. We absolutely love a list. And when you make a list like this, you're going to have snubs. And we definitely have some opinions on that. So, Tom, who's your biggest snub from this 22 under 22 list?
Tomas Aviles, center back for Inter Miami. I have no idea why he's not on this list. He's the most expensive center back in league history. His quality was immediate when he took over, when he signed in Miami and debuted. I think he's going to be an Argentine senior international at some point in the pretty near future. I don't know why he wasn't on this list.
Yeah, well, we're seeing right there his distribution from the back. He's very good in the air. He reads the game well, which means he can defend on the back foot. Miami's needed more of that as this run has gone along. But the big thing is he's able to trigger sequences of possession, and that's how Tata Martino wants to play. And Tata Martino, he's picking a lot of the players that Miami are sending. I'm going to stay on the back line, and I'm going to do what I think our producer Anders wants us to do and talk a little bit about a Seattle Sounders youngster. This is Reed Reed Baker-Whiting. He's now 18 years old. He is built like a man at this point, and he is playing as a fullback. That's him on the left, but he's also right-footed, so we've seen him on the right as well. He's still learning the defensive part of the game, but you can see he has the athleticism to hang with some of MLS's best attackers, and he was an attacking midfielder coming up, so he's very good on the ball. He has instincts with the ball and in the final third that have added a lot to the Sounders attack that needs it. He's a guy who I know you reported earlier in the season some of the bigger clubs in England are watching as well, and they're watching him as a fullback. And this is a transition that a lot of players make, right? You're the best player on your U13 team, but by the time you're U16, U17, you're like, oh, maybe other guys have that number 8 or that number 10 wrapped up, and they find a spot at fullback or out wide. It's happened for Reed Baker-Whiting. He's been really, really good this year. Been a lot of fun to watch, Stefano.
So this list has always been really kind of indicative of where players can go from here. And if you've been number 1 on this list, a lot of these players have had a lot of success moving forward. Here are some past number 1s. We start at the bottom, Miguel Almiron, who just scored a Champions League goal for Newcastle just the other day. Reminder that was the last year that it was 24 under 24, but still, he's had a lot of success for Newcastle. Doyle, who's the player on this list that you just really, kind of astounded by where he's gone?
I mean, if you take every player that's ever been on this list over the past half decade, Alphonso Davies would be number 1. There is a reason that Bayern Munich, one of the biggest and most successful clubs in the world, went out and spent what they spent on him. And he was an attacker, really a wingback in MLS for the Caps. Of course, came through the Caps Academy. Fantastic story as a refugee coming to Canada and obviously leading Canada to the World Cup. But he within 6 months, he was one of, if not the best attacking left fullback in the entire world for Bayern Munich. He has stayed at that perch over the past couple of years. That's a 1% outcome, Tom.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And I'm going to focus on last year's number 1, Jesus Ferreira. He's still at FC Dallas. He's still a leading goal scorer in this for that club. He's somebody who, again, one day he will go to Europe. And we talk about pathways and the different pathways in this list. Jesus Ferreira was the first homegrown to DP contract extension. Yeah. So he's getting treated very well at Dallas. He's playing very well. He's continuing
multi-millionaire by 22 years old. Yeah.
Not so bad. And then one day he'll be in Europe, Sevilla are a team that like them. There's some teams in Italy who are interested in them. It's just a matter of time, but you don't always have to go right away. You don't have to rush.
I just love this. I love this list. I love what we're doing here because it just highlights just how much the growing development of this league. What does this crop of players, these 22 guys here, Matt, what does it tell you as far as where MLS is in producing talent for Europe and really for world football?
I mean, a lot of it comes down, and I think about the clubs that we've named. Like Tom just casually threw out Sevilla. Sevilla, like how many European titles have Sevilla won in the last 20 years? Europa League titles, and like we're talking about Ajax and Chelsea and Manchester City and Arsenal and Porto. It is a list, a who's who of the greatest clubs in the world, and those clubs didn't really shop in MLS 6-7 years ago. So to see it come to this point, to see guys who are, we didn't even mention Brian Gutierrez. He's got a couple goals and 10 assists. You'll see him with the US U23s. Bernard Kamungo, as I mentioned, a Tanzanian refugee, now with the US U23s, living that particular dream. It is just a fantastic story. More than 22 stories every single year. This list goes, honestly, 50 or 60 just looking at it this season.
I was going to say earlier in the show, he said his list was about 40. That's a lie. It was totally like 100
10.
players. it was definitely like 75, 80 players.
It's a lot of fun. Developing young players, it is the most interesting thing that any league can do, and it's been great to watch MLS really lean into it the past half decade.
Yeah, and you as the patron saint of #PlayYourKids.
I don't even have to say it anymore.
What a beautiful moment.
Teams just do it now. I don't even have to push.
All those years of Doyle pushing that, and now we're seeing the rewards. All right, if you want to check out the full list of 22 under 22 for this season, you can check it out at MLSsoccer.com. And of course, remember, Decision Day is upon us, October 21st, the final day of the regular season where a lot will be decided. That coverage begins at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, October 21st. The Eastern Conference game kicks off at 6. The Western Conference games kick off at 9. And of course, we'll have a full wrap-up at 11 p.m.
You're going to slip on that number 10 and we'll see you out there?
I'll throw it on. Who knows? See, what team needs another number 10? I got it. Thanks so much for joining us here on the 22 under 22 show. And enjoy the rest of the regular season and playoffs for Major League Soccer.